Hey there, everybody. I am Bob Frady, and with me,
Is John Sigmund.
we are the co-founders of PropertyLens. And John, I wanted to talk to you about something. Get a lot of comments on social media and stuff about, well, why don't you just hire an inspector to look for all this stuff that's contained in your PropertyLens report? So, John, why don't you just hire an inspector?
Well, you should. You should never get a house without an inspection. That's too risky. But, an inspector is not perfect. They know a lot of stuff. They're very good at what they do, but you want to have a list. The other part of the problem is the inspection typically comes after you've made an offer.
Yep. You're already pot committed. You're pot committed. You're already in love. And now you're trying to figure out reasons to potentially back away. That's a terrible time. It's a terrible time because you find this house, you fall in love with it, and then you got to figure out, okay, what's hiding in here that's going to cause me to fall out of love with it? It's like, it's a bad situation for the buyer, and the seller knows you're committed to making it work, and then you're negotiating and all that stuff. Wouldn't it be better to know most of that stuff up front?
I would think so.
I would
You don't
think
want to
so.
get
Yeah, we are.
out
No.
and placed all of the furniture in your head as to where it's
Yeah.
going to go. And then find out that, oh, it's got a cracked foundation, it's got a bad roof. Most people who are buying houses are not construction experts.
Yep. Yep. And listen, every house, 99% of the houses in the US are used houses. Somebody else has already lived there once. So, okay, maybe it's 98.7%, but pretty close to 99% are used houses. And why not get a house history report? Let's give you an idea of what it looks like. So, here's a location in Texas. And this is what we call the inspector lens. And the job of this, now, listen, what we would love to see is that you get a property lens report before you ever make an offer, because that's when you can most fully inform yourself and ask the seller a whole bunch of questions. But let's say you've made an offer. Then you hand this inspector lens to the inspector to say, hey, make sure you check out these things as well. Pay special attention to these things, because the property lens report is telling me you got to check out these things. So for this location on Laurel Green Street in Spring, Texas, which is for sale, there was a hurricane event in 2017, and it was a bad one. There was moderate damage to the property, according to government catastrophe sources. So you want to make sure you're digging in and looking for sign of water and hurricane damage. Water damage in the basement or crawl space. Damage to the electrical and HVAC systems. Damage to the roof. Is the roof securely attached to the frame? Look for any mitigation work that's happened. Check the repairs up to local codes and consider performing a mold test. And there's also mold in this area, so I probably always try to do a mold test. That's the kind of stuff that we're saying, hey, just make sure you check this. So take an extra look at it. What else, John, what else are we going to look at if tell the inspector to look at?
Well, you want them to definitely take a look at the roof. We're estimating the age is 23 years old and it's past the end of its standard life. What's going on here? Because that could be a $13,000 expense for you that you're not ready for.
In Texas, if the roof is more than 7 years old, you switch to cost value, actual cash value, rather than replacement cost, unless you pay extra in your insurance. So, and there's a 2% deductible for the roof. So if this house is $270,000, it's $5,400 that you're going to have to write a check for sooner rather than later on this property. So you want the inspector to get up there, crawl around, make sure it's in good shape. And then our friends, the termites. Have there been any houses around here that have been tented? Does this place look like it has some termite infestation? Termite remediation is relatively straightforward, but it's not something you want to do after you've moved in. You want to do it before you move in.
Something the seller should pay for. It's in a 100-year flood zone. You're going to need flood insurance if you have a mortgage on this house. You're going to need, that's an extra expense. And there's no way, without the inspector looking this up, that they would know that. So we've already done that work for you. Note the presence of any previous flood remediation work. In a previous episode, we had an expert come in and note that if you notice that all of the electrical outlets are now at 5 feet, property's probably been flooded previously.
Yep. And it's an older house. It's 23 years old. Check on the water heater. Of course, most inspectors are going to do that. But it's just a reminder, make sure you make a check for these things. When I had my house inspected, they don't normally do a radon test in the house. I had to ask for that. And when I asked for it, it came back elevated. This is designed to alert you to things that might cause you to negotiate differently on the purchase of the house. When talking about PropertyLens and inspectors, what are the 3 things that you would remind people of?
1, always get an inspection and handle this to your inspector, because it will give them an extra thing to go on. And inspectors, if you use this report, you can point out extra services that you can sell. That would be my first thing. The second thing is, I want to know all of this stuff up front before I fall in love with the house. Because I want to know what to look for, what I need to be concerned about. I don't want to go placing furniture in my head in all of the rooms and then come to say, yeah, we're not moving there. Let's know all of that stuff up front. For me, knowing that this house is in a flood zone, I'm out. I don't want to deal with that. So those would be the things that I would be looking for. What about you?
I would say I would agree with you. Always get an inspection. However, sometimes you can't. The market's competitive. So in a situation where you have to bypass the inspection, get it inspected right after you buy the property, right after you close. Then you get the inspection. But here's the 3 things I would think about when it comes to PropertyLens and inspectors. Number 1, the best combination is PropertyLens plus an inspector, because PropertyLens will highlight things that should be taken extra looks at, and the inspector can go do those extra looks for you. The second thing, though, is that inspections generally come after you've made the offer on a property. You're already pot committed. Wouldn't it be better to know this stuff up front? And the third is that inspectors are paid by the seller and not by the buyer. I've had situations where I've sold a house and we've had the inspector come through and the agents talk to each other and go, maybe we shouldn't say it quite in this language. Maybe we should change it to this. You want to get the good inspection, not the one that just helps grease the deal. Giving these questions to the inspector will help you to make sure that your investment is going to be a good one. We love inspectors at PropertyLens. Love them. Don't ever get a property without getting an inspection whenever possible. So, John, anything else to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right. For PropertyLens, I'm Bob Frady.
I'm John Sigmund.
Until next time.